Okay. And Nisargadatta Maharaj talked about this. I think Ramana talked about this too. And it's this concept that because you are, yeah, everything else essentially is. But you can invert this so that because there's a body and mind that you're aware of, it's almost constantly pointing to the awareness of that. So the not idea, but the existence of a body, mind, and world is constantly pointing back to what you are as what's aware of that. It's a tricky kind of move, but because the head is always going with the thought process, there's something that's aware of the head. Now, what happens is we become identified with that movement of the head as if that's what I am. Now, that's that false identification. What you actually are is what's aware of that. So it's a movement of the faith, or where we're putting the trust in that relationship between the two, the perceived two. That's where language gets a little tricky, because language is going to say that the awareness and the thought process are two, which ultimately they're not. But sorry, my thing just froze there. Oh no, we're good. Okay. Yeah. So because there's an arising of a body and mind, there's something that's always aware of that. So rather than constantly getting pulled into what we're aware of, the movement is to go, there's a seeing of what I'm aware of, so that therefore I'm awareness. I'm not identified with what I'm seeing or knowing. No. The other part of it is there's not inherently a knower. Yeah, if I'm going, okay, well, I'm the knower of the body, mind, and world, then who is the knower? There isn't a knower, there's a knowing. It's not an individual personal knowing. It's a just a present before the head knowing of the contents of that knowing. If there's a movement to go, I'm the knower, then I'm stuck back in the bondage of self. You see, there's an individuality put into the knowingness. There's a claiming of it. That's the movement of the head. Another way to look at it is that any effort is coming from what you're not. So any mental effort or movement of effort done in the head and any effort done in the body comes from what you're not. What you are is effortless presence, beingness, which comes before the effort. And that's really important to see too, because it's a way to negate. Right? It's a way to negate. If there's movement or effort happening, you're not that. You're not that movement. That's a really actually quite a effective way to negate. Because we spend a lot of our lives identified as the head, making effort to obtain or get somewhere, ultimately to try to get to happiness as an individual. That is going to seemingly take a lot of effort to do. Now, all of that effort is coming from the head and the body, but if I'm identified as that effort, life is going to seem like it's really hard. Life is going to seem like it's a very heavy trudge through the trenches. Like it takes a ton of effort. And if I'm identified as what's making that effort, yeah, I'm making way more effort than I need to in order to live a life. Because the head is a hungry beast. The head's always going to want more. So if I'm identified as the head, then I'm essentially putting gas into the mental process. The gas is the trust or the faith in the mental process. And then that mental process is going to want more in order to try to find happiness. Now that's never going to stop. Millions of dollars, cars, whatever, houses. It's just going to keep going on and on. So it's that fighting. Yeah, we could also say it's that fighting which causes this feeling of just surviving life rather than actually living life. Why is that important? Well, one, we can spend our whole lives under that illusion that I am the head and the body, and that I need to put a ton of effort into life to get happy. That just makes life heavy. Actually, in my experience, we miss then life. We miss each moment of life because we're constantly trudging forward, trying to get somewhere else. It becomes super effortful. Life seems really hard. So, because life seems really hard, I want to get out of that difficulty somehow. Now, if I'm identified with the system that's making all the effort, I'm going to want to get out of the system that's causing all the effort and tension in my life. Alcohol, drugs, whatever. For some of us, it becomes so effortful that it becomes unlivable. But because we're identified as the system that's making all the effort, I want out of the system. And then for some of us, it becomes, I don't know what to do. Life is too hard. And then I want to kill myself because it seems to be the only way out of the thing. That's one of the main reasons that I'm like, keep giving these talks, because I'm really tired of seeing people take that option, because there's a solution. There is a solution here. And it's to see that you're not everything that is making all of this effort. So if you can see, if you can know that effort's being made, if you can know the action of the head and you can know the action of the body, you can know the world, then you're not the world. The same way that the computer that I'm on right now, the eyes, the physical eyes can see that computer. So there's a reasoning taking place that I'm not the computer. So if I can see the thoughts, if I can know the action of the body, if I can know the world around me, then I'm not that. You see, so just by the happening of the body and the mind, it's constantly pointing back to what you are, because there's something aware of the body and the mind. And then you'll see yourself kind of get hooked into that movement of the head and how that all works. But the way you see it is by seeing that you're not it. And then ultimately, of course, there's oneness, there's unity in everything, but words aren't going to touch that. It's not a great, words are not going to get you there. You feel that by seeing what you're not. So everything that's making effort is not you. It's not what you are. You are effortlessness before effort. Now here's another hook in this whole thing. If I'm living as the body and the mind, life seems to be heavy. It seems to be like it's too much work. So then what happens oftentimes is, in order to get away from the heaviness that life seems to be, again, I make an effort. If I'm identified as the head, the mental system, I make an effort as that mental system to get out of the mental system. One, that's not going to work, but two, it reifies that I am the mental system, which I'm not. So making an effort to try to get out of something that you're not inherently in is reifying the idea that you're in. That's really an amazing thing. It's like, because often we come up in our lives, we grow up with this idea of like, the harder I work, the more I'm going to get, the more happy I'll be, or the more stable life will be. Ooh, yeah. But you see, it's that process of being identified with the effort that is causing the heaviness in your life. Because everything that is actioning, which is everything, is not you. So then what happens? Yeah. What happens to all the movement of actioning? Well, really, it just keeps actioning because effort is going to happen. It's just that things operate, the body and the mind operate a lot more efficiently when we live from the knowingness that we're not the action. Because then the action's much more natural, it's much more fluid. And there is that knowingness of interconnectivity with everything around, rather than a dualistic separation. So just by the happening of the body and the mind, it's pointing to what's aware of the body and the mind. So if something's making effort, the mind, the body, then you are not that. It's a way to negate that. And I feel like it is a very important outlook, because the other thing about effort is if I'm identified as the head, which is making a bunch of effort in life, and that's not working out, if the effort I'm putting in to get a promotion, I'm working really hard at my job, if I'm making effort to get a promotion and then I don't get that promotion, there's a perceived failure in the head. If I'm identified as the head, now I'm the one who failed. And then we can obviously see how that becomes a slippery slope. So we don't take the no promotion as just the happening of life going on. We take it as a very personal attack, a very personal failure. Now I have failed in getting that promotion. Whew. That can stem onto a whole story of I've always failed. Yeah, now that's the head moving. That's action of the head doing that. Now I have always failed. That suggests, for some reason in the head, that I always will fail. You see that? Past, future. The head is feeding off of these two things. This is some of the effort that I'm talking about. The mental system is operating, meaning there's action, there's effort taking place. If I'm identified as that, I failed in getting the promotion. I've always failed in the past. I'm going to fail in the future. And then that depressive cycle starts, or that anxiety starts. How am I going to survive? Am I going to be able to feed myself or my family? Am I going to be able to do this, this, this? That's all efforting of the head moving around. If I'm identified as that, life gets heavy, and then I want out of the heaviness. I can't get out of the heaviness as the mental system, so I'd maybe try drinking, or I try drugging, or I try sex, or whatever I'm going to use. Whatever you're going to use to try to get out of that. You're not going to be able to get out of it because you're not in it. But by trying to get out of it, it's reifying the idea that you are the movement of the head. So if you're seeing movement and you're seeing effort, you negate that because you're not that. You're not that movement. Yeah. I also like that approach because it also doesn't bring a negativity to the body and the mind. In a way, it brings this idea that the body and the mind are really the teaching. The world is the teaching. Yeah? Because if I'm knowing the body and the mind in the world, there's something knowing it. So it's a constant reaffirmation of what you are, and it's constant on what to negate.